biggest challenge right now in a post-COVID world will definitely be funding. I think there's been a great period in the past 5-6 years where there's been plenty of money available to governments, with plenty of support actually from the private sector. But I think with the kind of level of debt that major economies are going into as a result of COVID, is going to absolutely kind of pose the right question of where best to be spending government funds over the next 5 to 10 years. I think also there's been the constant challenge across our industry around net productivity. And so I think it's well known that the construction industry has always had this challenge around productivity. But if you look at the data over the past 20 years, despite all the great work that's happened in regards to innovation, in regards to kind of the great steps forward that we've made in health and safety, in diversity and inclusion, in the improving quality, actually the net productivity has remained pretty static.
Pretty straightforward. Just look at other industries. Look at the $1 trillion markets in the technology sector. They've created trillions of dollars of value. That it's absolutely going to transform. It's already transforming every industry. It's going to transform. If you don't believe, if the people in this market don't believe it, look at other industries and what's happened. How the transformation, acceleration, change. Healthcare as a real example. Healthcare and treatments and pathways of healthcare are improving significantly. Reducing mortality rates because they're using data and AI and technology.
Seeing a number of major programs where the data-led programs, the real sort of acceptance of modern methods of technology and delivery through likes of BIM, through modern methods of construction, through design, through kind of manufacturing and assembly. The real sense of how do we really drive that efficiency? How do we really drive that productivity improvement through technology?
One of the challenges I see in most industries and in this industry is if we people at the senior levels in whether it's government or whether it's in companies, if they can't understand the value of what this can do for them, it really makes it harder to get adoption, to get that to happen. I think that's one of the biggest ones, is a cultural change around in organizations to understand how these digital technologies and how data can actually work and be adopted.
The biggest shift I've seen, and it's a cultural shift actually across the industry, of how leaders are coming together better and actually kind of working together to solve what are some pretty complex challenges. Examples I would want to share with you actually around how the whole supply chain has come together, and supply chain I mean from investor to major client body to major contractor, and then into consultants and suppliers as well. And that is with a big investor or insurance company called Legal & General across in the UK. They worked directly with Laing O'Rourke initially around trying to kind of really get after the modern methods of construction and design for manufacturing assembly in the housing industry across the UK. Now, you had Legal & General there who were the investor, but also the major developer. And they took their time to actually co-invest with Laing O'Rourke in a major research and development facility in advance, actually, of a lot of the kind of pipeline of demand that was coming through.
Well, I mean, the UK government actually, I don't know, the UK government's done an amazing amount in the last few years. I mean, they have invested huge amounts, something called Innovate UK, something called the Digital Catapult. They have invested huge amounts. But the good thing that they're doing is not just saying, here's a pot of money, go and figure it out. It's saying, here's some things that we want the industry to adopt. And these are the benefits we want the industry and industry to get. So they're being very reasonably prescriptive, not how to get there, but what needs to be done. And then they're investing grant money for those outcomes. And obviously part of this stuff is about those learnings of outcomes. I have to be open and available to everybody else. So as I said, we're working on Innovate UK grant at the moment around the energy markets, and the learnings that we're creating will be shared amongst the industry. There are a bunch of other projects. There's hundreds of projects like this.
The role of intelligent client, I think, is really accelerating across the industry. Working with the key suppliers, with the key consultants as well, to create that sense of high performance as well. And so getting kind of the culture right of the team is very, very important. But also leading these programs and projects with clear benefits cases that are able to be measured as you go through the program and can be articulated to all your stakeholders. Now, whether they are at government level, whether at local community level, whether they're a direct and private investor as well.
Infrastructure is fundamental to every city. And the problem is that the population is going to increase in the next 50 years significantly. How do we accommodate all those people? The second thing is people are moving more and more into cities. So we're going to have, we already have mega cities, but we're going to have even bigger cities.
If I just use Lower Thames Crossing as one example, Lower Thames Crossing is a huge tunnel project that connects one side of London to the other side of London across the Thames. Now, someone may see that that's a gigantic infrastructure project, and it is. But are there benefits about delivering that programme on time and on budget? Absolutely not. That is about connectivity. And so how is that articulated to the local community? What is it going to mean for the person who lives on one side of the Thames in their day-to-day lives about kind of having this new infrastructure put into place? And of course, as this project is being developed, there's also a very different way that people are choosing to get to work. Maybe it's going to be less diesel fuel, hydrogen carbon sort of fueled cars, more into electrical vehicles. How do you then start actually having a look at the commercial model of this whole infrastructure project and how that benefits the local community? There's a gigantic environmental challenge there as well. But actually, again, making sure that connectivity with central government, with local government, with the Highways England Authority, who are the client, into local communities, indeed into the consultants and contractors as well. It was a huge team approach there to make sure that engagement was strong and consistent, but absolutely geared towards that benefits-led approach to major programme delivery. There's a great innovation session that we had that I was lucky enough to lead, which was, let's get all the great ideas out from everybody involved in this project. And there's about sort of 4,500 people involved in this scheme, but countless more in terms of the supply chain in due course as well. But let's get these great ideas out in a kind of innovation fair to begin with. Now, what that brought was, given the suppliers involved in the project, was world-class best practice in the delivery of major infrastructure programs, and particularly kind of tunnel projects as well. So one of the innovation thoughts there was, well, how do we get a better workspace that makes sure that people are not just coming to work here, sat at their desk, do their jobs, but don't particularly actually communicate with other people outside of their own team or their own company. So how do you create that culture that really drives knowledge share, innovation practices? That's a strong drive towards get it right first time, the reducing kind of the scale of repetition or duplication of design. I'd firstly like to see much better integration of the whole supply chain. Now, I think I've mentioned earlier on that one organisation doesn't have all the answers. I think so that integration of bringing the different diversity of skills and perspectives is really important. Second thing I'd like to see in infrastructure and construction industry particularly is a dramatic improvement in our diversity and inclusion. I think we are an industry that is way behind the times in terms of getting much fairness and equality across our different sexes, genders, and own sexual preferences. I think it's really important that we have an inclusive and diverse workforce that bring the best ideas and the great experiences to life. And the third one for me is around really embracing innovation and accepting actually that we've got to today with certain practices. But there's a great quote that Clayton Christensen said that I will paraphrase that in effect, if you're sat on the leadership team of a consultancy, just think this: are you moving at least as fast as your fastest moving customer? Because if you are not, the end is nigh. And so I think that's the challenge to us as an industry right now with the advancements of technology. We either embrace it and apply that to recognize client need and user experience, or frankly, I think we'll find ourselves being taken over very quickly.